Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of my Downton Abbey reviews. Today we are going to talk about season 5. I'm here in the middle of Easter preparations, so I'm very messy today. Even my hair is crazy, so I had to tame my hair with this pearl thing, whatever that's called in English, I don't even know the word. But I'm going to spare myself for half an hour to talk about my opinion about season 5. Thank you very much for all of you who are still watching my videos, even though they are very long. But once I will finish making the reviews of Downton Abbey, I hope that my next videos will be a little shorter, so maybe it will be easier for many of you to watch the next videos. So let's get to season 5. There is a lot going on in season 5, and I have to tell you that next to season 4, season 5 is also one of the seasons that I like less. I told you recently that season 4 is the worst one in my opinion. I think that season 5 is a little better, but not that much better. Just like with season 4, I definitely prefer the second part of season 5. But overall, there is a lot things going on in season 5. So today, I will just say a few words about every episode. For me, the first part of season 5 is difficult to watch, mostly because, as you know, I'm an Edith fan. Edith is my favorite sister because I can relate to her. I have a very similar life path as Edith, so I like Edith the most. And it's very difficult to watch, mostly because of all the Drew plot. As you know, I don't like Mrs. Drew. I think that she's mentally unstable, that she's very rude, not a nice person. So for me to watch Edith struggling with seeing her daughter when Mrs. Drew is making it hard for her, those are not my favorite episodes. But let's get to the point. I will tell you a few words about every episode. So let's start from episode 1. In episode 1 there's a lot going on. We see that Edith has given her daughter to the Drews. So we see Edith meeting secretly with Mr. Drew to talk over this whole arrangement with Marigold. And of course Mr. Drew knows that Marigold is really Edith's daughter, and he doesn't condemn her, so he's generally a very nice man, and he wanted to help Edith because the Crawley family helped him in the past, so he feels like he owns something to the family. We have Miss Bunting, we have Rose trying to help Miss Bunting to get into Downton. We have this whole beginning of the war memorial in Downton, where there is a committee from the village coming to Downton to discuss about the place of the war memorial, and they are also making Carson the head of the committee, which is rather upsetting for Robert, who was expecting to be the chairman himself. And then we have Isabel and Dickie. Dickie is trying to persuade Isabel to the idea of marriage, but she seems very reluctant to the idea. And we have this whole big party because of Robert and Cora's 37th anniversary, if I remember correctly, or was it 27th anniversary? I don't remember now. No, anyhow, there's a party in the house, and there's Lady Anstrutter, who Jimmy used to work for, and she comes to the party with using a white lie about her car, and then, as we see later, she's going to bed with Jimmy. But first there's a fire going on in the Abbey, which Edith causes by throwing the book into the fireplace. And there's a fire, there's an evacuation of the whole Abbey, And at the end, during this evacuation, we see Robert catching Jimmy and Lady Anstruthers in bed together. So naturally, he asks Carson to send Jimmy away. So Jimmy is the last person from this foursome, for this kitchen foursome. Jimmy, Alfred, Ivy, Daisy. Of course, Daisy stays till the end, but Jimmy is the last person to just, being sacked and going away. And then we have episode 2. In episode 2, we have whole birth control scene because Mary decides to take a week with Tony Gillingham. They decide to go away together and know each other better, also intimately. And she asks Anna to buy her this stuff. I still don't know what it was, but that was some kind of contraception. And Anna has to go to the pharmacy to buy the contraception, which makes her very uncomfortable. And the lady who is selling the item in the pharmacy is not making it any easier for Anna, because she's basically judging Anna and she's discussing with her about her sexual life with her husband, which is unbelievable for me. So this is the very unpleasant scene, and I still think that Mary should do it by herself. She shouldn't ask Anna to do it. She could have gone to London and buy it anonymously in some pharmacy, but of course, as we know, Mary likes to give all the unpleasant things to her servants other than doing it themselves. So this is it. And Charles Blake and Mr. Bricker are coming to Downton. Mr. Bricker is, as Robert calls him, the art dealer. And he comes to Downton to see the Della Francesca painting. But he has sort of feelings for Cora. He's very much enchanted with Cora. So this is the whole plot. But what I like about season 2 is the scene where in the evening Rose, Mary and Charles Blake are in the living room together, and Rose goes away to sleep, and Mary is talking to Charles Blake about the fact that she decided to choose Tony Gillingham instead of Charles Blake. And Charles Blake, as intelligent and as witty as he is, he tells her that she should really think very carefully about this decision, because Tony is not that intelligent as Mary, and Mary is being very outrageous for his words. She doesn't understand why he's saying that, but of course Charles Blake was right, and as we see later, he was totally right about Mary and this whole idea of her relationship with Tony. It just simply doesn't work out. But Mary decides to go on a trip with Tony. So there is that. And we have this beautiful plot with the wireless radio who appears in Downton. Of course, there is very funny plot where Rose is trying to convince Robert to get the wireless in Downton to stay. But Robert continuously is saying no, no, no. Wherever Rose wants to talk about the wireless radio, Robert is saying no. This is very funny. And there is very touching, for me at least, scene where we see upstairs and downstairs people listening to the wireless radio, and the king is speaking. And Violet is standing from her chair as a sign of respect for the monarchy. I love the British respect for the monarchy. Of course, it's no longer that way as it used to be 100 years ago, but still, this gesture that Violet made, in my opinion, was very British, because this was typical for British people back then. They had huge respect for the monarchy, so I like this scene. And the whole episode ends with Mary and Tony being in Liverpool together, and they are staying in the same hotel, they are in the next rooms, so we know that their love week is about to begin. And then we have the next episode 3, in which we already see that the love week is going on, and that Mary is not very happy about it. And I like all the, as Carson would say, smoothie deliberations of the fan, why Mary didn't choose Tony, because many people say that this was because Tony was not very good in bed and Mary didn't like it. I think that Tony was definitely a big wimp and he was too weak. I don't like Mary, but even I can see that Tony Gillingham was not a good match for her because he was too weak. Mary is a strong person and Gillingham is a total wimp. And as an additional factor, I think that it was possible that he was a lousy lover. He looks like a lousy lover to me. So Mary decides not to go with the idea of, of the relationship with Gillingham. And then we have all this continuation of Bricker being at the Abbey, and he likes Cora very much. He sits with Cora by the dinner. He's trying to, some kind of seduce her or something like that. And she's happy because there's someone finally who is interested in what she has to say. So I can see that Cora is very happy about this situation. And still we have the continuation of Edith visiting the Drews all the time, wanting to be with Marigold, and Mrs. Drew being very rude and obsessed. She's telling her husband that they have an affair, that Edith is in love with him, or maybe he's in love with Edith. Really, it's tiring, annoying, and in this episode 3, there is a situation where Mrs. Drew tells her husband that she doesn't want to see Edith anymore in their house, and Mr. Drew tells that to Edith, and Edith is devastated about it. And the whole episode ends with the plot of the Russians coming to Downton, because we see that Rose has involved herself in helping the Russian aristocrats who had to search for shelter in England after the Russian Revolution. So we have a group of Russian aristocrats coming to Downton, and they are looking at various mementos, Fabergé eggs, for example. Oh, I'm getting so excited because I love Fabergé eggs. Of course, the real Fabergé eggs are extremely expensive. They cost like a few millions of dollars. So I only have few fake Fabergé eggs in my collection, but still I love them. And of course there is a very funny scene because Violet, because of spreads, she gets to find out that Mary was with Gillingham in the Liverpool hotel, and she gives her a very angry talk, telling her that she doesn't understand how it is possible that she went to bed with him. And Mary tells her granny that she doesn't want to be pressured by her or by anyone. And then we see that Prince Kuragin, who used to be Violet's, I don't know how to say this, beau or someone like that, and they meet. After a lot of years they meet, and Mary gives those knowing looks to Granny, letting her know that she shouldn't lecture her because she did very similar things in the past. And that's basically the whole episode. And then we have the next episode 4, where Violet visits Prince Kuragin, where we see in what kind of conditions the Russians are living in England. They are sitting in some kind of dark, very, very dark place and being taken care of there. And they are reminiscing, their old life at Russia, and they are telling Prince Kuragin is telling Violet how much he misses his old life and how unhappy he is that his life has changed so dramatically now. And we have also a continuation of Miss Bunting and Tom. Miss Bunting is being invited to dinner at Downton, and she has a very unpleasant fight with Robert, because Miss Bunting is socialist, communist. She has totally different ideas for life than Robert, and they have a very huge fight at dinner, where Robert has one of his angry outbursts and he asks Mrs. Bunting to leave his house immediately. And she doesn't do it. I still don't understand why. If someone asked me to leave their house, I would do it immediately. And there she stays on there. And of course, the downstairs people have a lot to talk about after this fight, because that's what they live with, all the gossips from the upstairs people. So there's that plot, and this is like the beginning of the end for Mrs. Bunting, because in the next episode Mrs. Bunting decides to go away. In the meantime, she's teaching Daisy, because Daisy decides to increase the level of her education, which is a great idea. And she starts to study, but she cannot understand arithmetics. So Mrs. Patmore asks Miss Bunting if she could help Daisy, and she comes and she teaches Daisy, and Daisy is looking at her like some kind of an idol. So there's also that plot. And then we have the next episode 5. What I remember the most about episode 5 is this is one of my favorite scenes between, as I call them, my golden trio. This is Carson, Mrs. Hughes, Mrs. Patmore. I love those three. They should have their own show. I will continue to just repeat it all the time. They definitely should have their own show, because they are brilliant. So there's a funny scene where Mrs. Patmore finds out that she received an inheritance from her aunt. There's quite a lot of money, and she is wondering what to do with this money. So she asks Mr. Carson for advice. Of course, he's very proud that he's considered the man of the world and that he can, advise Mrs. Patmore. So he tries to gain some information from Robert about building companies to give it to Mrs. Patmore. But in the end, Mrs. Patmore, and the scene that I told you that I like in episode 5 is the scene where Mrs. Patmore comes to Mr. Carson's pantry, and Mrs. Hughes is also there, and she tells them about the inheritance. And they are, chit-chatting with Mrs. Hughes while Carson is, rolling his eyes, and I can see him telling literally, oh, what I have to put up with those two women. This is very hilarious. And in the end, Mrs. Patmore decides to invest in a building. She decides to buy a cottage, which she wants to renovate and use it as some kind of B&B. And this idea gives Mr. Carson an idea to do the same thing, to invest in a property, but he wants to do it with Mrs. Hughes. So by the end of the episode, he asks Mrs. Hughes if they would be willing to, if she would be willing to invest in a property together with him. And in the meantime, sad news comes from Germany. We find out that Michael Gregson was being killed, probably in some kind of fight connected to the Nazis. So we find out that he's dead, and of course Edith is devastated. And we also find out that she inherited his paper, and she's going to be, editor-in-chief now. So this is basically all about episode 5. I have to look through my notes because, as many times as I've seen Downton, I really can't remember all the plots. And then we have the next episode, where of course it's a very difficult time for Edith, because she just found out that her future husband, as she probably hoped, was killed. And of course, as usual, nobody in Downton cares about Edith's feelings. Mary is going to a hairdresser and she's cutting her hair short, which I think was not a very good decision, because she didn't look very well. Mary has a very, very extremely thin face, so with this short hair she didn't look very well. But that's my opinion, of course, maybe some of you think differently. But overall, in the 6th episode, there is the scene that we discussed recently in the group, which I find totally appalling. This is the scene where Edith is dressed black. She's mourning after Michael Gregson. It's like one day since she found out that he's dead. And Mary comes to show everyone her new haircut, and she acts like nothing has happened. She's talking about making a picnic, a horse race, and Rose is, she's backing her up because she just met Atticus, her future husband, in the previous episode. Atticus is Jewish, so there's this, whole problem of different faith, but I'm not going to get into that now. Anyway, Mary is telling everyone that they are going to have a picnic on Saturday, and she acts, and Edith is being outraged, and she has like her own angry outburst, which of course nobody understands, and Cora even tells to Edith, "Oh, you're being unfair." That was awful, because as I told you in my yesterday's post, when Mary was mourning Matthew, we saw her 6 months later, and she was walking and talking and acting like zombie, and everyone were respecting that. Edith was even hiding a Valentine card that she received from Michael Gregson just to not make Mary sad. And Mary couldn't even respect one day of mourning for Edith, and she just acted like she didn't really care. So the result is that Edith is on the edge of her durability, and she decides to take a very drastic measure. She goes to the Druze, and she is taking Marigold's birth certificate with her. And there's a scene which some of you say is breaking your hearts, but it's totally different with me. I adore this scene where Edith finally takes her daughter from the Druze, because I still sustain my opinion that Mrs. Drew is not a stable person, and we can see later that she even kidnapped Marigold from this big show. Mrs. Drew is not a nice person. She's not nice, she's rude, and she's also mentally unstable. She has very sick obsession about Marigold, because it was not love, it was a sick obsession. I don't know, maybe she really hated people from the big house, and she wanted to show Edith that she will some kind of win with her or something. I don't know, but just I like the scene where Edith finally decides to take her life back, and she's taking Marigold, and she's going away to London, not telling anyone where she's going, and she's not staying in Michael Gregson's flat because she knows that everyone could find her there. And she's going to London, and everyone are in Downton except Mary are very afraid of her. And this is it. And I forgot to tell you that in the meantime, Dickie proposes to Isabel, and she decides to accept his proposal. And at the end of episode, we have this horse race with Tony Gillingham, Charles Blake, Mabel Lane Fox, which we meet in previous episode. I don't like Mabel Lane Fox. I think that she's like a carbon copy of Mary. She's like Mary too. I don't see the point of even bringing this character into the show, she's only there to take Tony Gillingham away, finally. But she's the same as Mary, so, and even more annoying, so I don't really like her. So this is the whole episode. And in the beginning of the episode 7, we see Rosamond coming to Downton, because Violet sends for her, because they want to find Edith, and they want to tell Cora the truth about Marigold. But Mrs. Drew is faster. She comes to Downton, and she tells Cora about Marigold. This is, in my opinion, another proof that she was a very rude, hateful woman. I'm gonna stick to my opinion regardless of what other people think. So Cora finds out that she has another granddaughter, and during this dinner, Atticus tells Rose that probably they should search for Edith in the paper, and they decide to go with the idea. And Rosamond and Cora are coming to London. They are finding Edith. They are talking about the possible options, and finally they decide that Edith should pretend that she's adopting Marigold to raise her, not telling everyone that this is her real daughter. So this all ends well when it comes to Edith. And in the meantime, we see Bates and Anna, who from the beginning of season 5, we see that Sergeant Willis is in Downton trying to investigate the death of Mr. Green. And dark clouds begin to gather over Bates's because they are being suspected to kill Green. And this is all going on. And in the meantime, Bates tells Anna that maybe they should sell his mother's London place to run a hotel. So this is another one from the downstairs team who is thinking about running some kind of B&B. So this is also it. And again, there is a question of Mr. Carson and Mrs. Hughes talking about also, buying a property together. They are looking for the options, and for now, Mrs. Hughes doesn't tell Carson the truth, but she will do later, that she can't buy this house with him, but this will happen in the next episode. And in the meantime, Rose and Atticus are engaging, and we know that there's going to be a wedding, and there's a famous dinner where Larry Gray is being very rude to Isabel, so she decides to call off her engagement with Dickie because she's being treated very, very unfairly. And at the end of episode 7, unfortunately, very sad scene where Doc Isis dies, lying between Robert and Cora. So this is it. Episode 8 is very nice episode because this is a long episode with Rose's wedding. So there's a lot of things going on. We find out that Tom decides to go to the United States because he's tired with Downton life. He doesn't want to live that way anymore, so he decides for a new beginning in the United States, and of course he's taking Phoebe with him. Then again we have Atticus, his parents, his father who is Jewish, and he has bad feelings about Atticus marrying Rose because she's not Jewish and stuff like that. We have Susan trying to break the marriage also by setting up Atticus by making those photographs of him and this prostitute, I think, at his bachelor party, and those are all very, very interesting plots. But what I like the most about not only the Rose's wedding is nice too. Finally, Tony Gillingham is going away with Mabel, so we have the end of Tony's Gillingham plot. Rose is getting married, so she's going away from Downton too. Miss Bunting has gone away in the previous episode, and the scene that I like the most about episode 8 is the war memorial. I don't know why, but it always makes me cry. It's very touching because Robert decided to found a memorial for Mrs. Patmore's nephew who was shot for cowardice, and he didn't have a memory plaque in his own family village. So Robert, at the unveiling memorial ceremony, he's asking Mrs. Patmore to see the memorial plaque that he founded for her nephew. This is a very touching scene. And by the end of this scene, of course, by the end of Rose's wedding, we see Anna being arrested because she's being accused of killing Green, which is very ridiculous. She's only, I don't know why, I still don't understand why she was, you know, why she was found guilty, because, you know, some guy, some detective just saw her near the place where Green was living, and that was the proof that she killed him. That was unnecessary. I still think that there was too much legal problem for basis, but that's it. So this episode ends with the scene where they are walking towards Downton, and Robert, who earlier was telling Cora that he has a feeling that Marigold reminds him of someone, and he finally gets that she is Michael Gregson's daughter. And this is it of episode 8, and then we have long episode 9, where all the Downton upstairs people are going to Scotland to a shooting, and they are guests of Lord Cinderby. So there's a lot of things going on in this episode, in this 2 parts episode. For me, it was interesting that Mary and Edith both met their future husbands in the same episode, in the same place, because Bertie and Henry are arriving, and in the future they will be the husbands of Mary and Edith. So this is very interesting for me. And what else do we have? Of course, we have Bates pleading guilty, so Anna would be out of prison. So Anna is out of prison, she comes back to Downton. Mr. Bates is disappearing, so they could not arrest him. So now he's, the one who is being, maybe possibly a suspected person. And we have the end of episode is this wonderful Christmas party where everyone are happy, and Mr. Bates is coming back to Downton. But my most favorite moment of this episode is, of course, Carson's proposal to Mrs. Hughes, because Mrs. Hughes wanted to buy the property with Carson, but in reality she had no money, and she told Mr. Carson the truth, that for many years she has been taking care of her not right in the head sister, and she's been paying for her house care. So she has absolutely no savings, so she cannot afford herself to buy a property with him. And he's very, very disappointed with it, because he wanted them to buy the property together, but of course it was just a pretext, because in reality he really wanted to marry with her. But because she couldn't afford to buy a property with him, he is buying the house and registering it for both of their names. And he tells her that during this Christmas party, and she doesn't understand why. And he's telling this famous sentence that he wants to be stuck with her. I can quote, of course, I can quote this scene in the middle of the night, because I have seen it so many times, that I can really quote this in the middle of the night. So this is a wonderful scene where we find out that Mr. Carson and Mrs. Hughes will soon be married. So that's it for season 5. Oh my god, once again I made a very long video, but as I told you in the beginning, we still have the review of episode 6, and then my next videos will be a tad shorter. So I hope that you had fun with me today. Have a great day. Bye.